Today we begin. Have you ever been in when you are starting? Can't I just say that I love technology? I love the fact that I can begin a video, and if things aren't going well, I can start over. I can hit that button and I can begin again. Don't you wish life was that easy? You know, when you put your foot in your mouth, when you do something that you just wish you could undo, redo some part of your life, don't you just wish there was a button that you could push that would automatically start again? Unfortunately, we don't have a magic button. We don't have this button that we can just push that will begin things again. But the beautiful part of life and the most beautiful part of faith is that we are called to begin again, that there are new beginnings for us all of the time. We just have to be vulnerable enough, humble enough, and allow ourselves to step into that moment. I think that's what Nicodemus did. On Sunday, we talked about Nicodemus coming to Jesus in the middle of the night. This famous story that we have deemed Nick at Night, that's found in John chapter 3. And Nicodemus, a leader in the church, a very faithful person, somebody who had studied the Torah, knew the law, thought that he knew who God was, comes in the middle of the night to see Jesus because he has some questions. There's something that is stirring within him, that is wrestling inside of him, and he just cannot keep it quiet anymore. Do you have any questions? Any deep things that are inside of you that are stirring, that you try to push down, that you try to pretend aren't there, but they just keep bubbling up inside? And maybe it's in the quiet of the day or the stillness of the night where those questions, those thoughts just start to turn and you just cannot let go of them. I would encourage you to be brave, just like Nicodemus, to be brave and to go to God with those questions, to be brave and to ask all that is on your mind, in your heart, and seek God in that. So Nicodemus comes. He comes to Jesus with his questions, being bold and courageous to ask this man who has stirred up something deep inside of him. And as he comes and he seeks out Jesus, Jesus seeks out Nicodemus as well. He seeks out the deep questions of his spirit. And he shares with Nicodemus how he needs to be born again. Nicodemus's response is one of my favorite in the Bible because he is so literal, right? He's like, Jesus, how can I be born again if I'm already an old man? Now, that question is really funny, but if we really think of the heart of that question, maybe Nicodemus's question isn't necessarily about the actual being born again as a new baby, now as an adult. How do you enter into that? Maybe his question is more like, Jesus, I've already reached all the benchmarks that I had for me in life. I've reached the goals that I had. I've become this person who I wanted to be. So how can I be born again? How is it that I have a calling to begin again when everything seems to be the way that it should be? I think we all have those questions, right? We all get into a space where we feel like life is going really well, and we wonder about this call that God has for us to begin again. Beginning again can be scary, right? It means stripping away all that we know and starting over. It means letting go of some things that we hold really near and dear to us and starting afresh. And as today is a gloomy day in the neighborhood, I was thinking about how this season is a season where life is about to begin again, right? We have had the winter. where everything has gone dormant. Things look like they have died. My grass is brown. There's no leaves on the trees. There is no flowers that are budding up. And it feels really dark and gloomy in this part of our season. It feels like spring, new life will never come. But we still look. We still wait. We wait for the first signs of spring, like the first crocus that starts to poke out of the ground, or the first robin that comes into one of our trees, or then the first daffodil that we know is going to be covered up by snow, but we can't wait to see that sign of new life. Maybe deep within us, we feel kind of like things are dormant. Like maybe even things have died. And we're wondering during this season of Lent, is there an opportunity for us to even begin again? Is there even an opportunity for new life to spring forth? And maybe within the questions, it's the way in which the soil is working within us that begins to work and spring up something new. It might just not have reached the surface yet. It might not just have broke ground, and we might not be able to see it, but it is there. It is there and it is coming. Because when we have faith in Jesus, when we put our trust and faith in God, we know that new beginnings is a part of this process. Abraham and Sarah, or Abram and Sarai, as we first learn about them in Genesis chapter 12, began again at the age of 75, right? It isn't even till later that they then have their promised son, Isaac. There are so many ways in which the Bible has stories of people's lives beginning again. We have Joseph, who is given over by his brothers into slavery, and he begins again because God is faithful. We have Moses, who has a life under Pharaoh, but begins to see the reality of his people, and he's called to something new, a new start, to begin again. We have David, who is out in the pastures, who's shepherding his sheep, and yet God has something in store for him, and he is called to be king, called to begin that journey, to begin again. There's all of these stories. Mary, who has her life planned out, and all of a sudden God enters in and says, Mary, you are going to bear a son, and you will name him Jesus. A new start, to begin again. I think part of our call is to not get stuck in the way that things are, to not feel like there's no more room for growth or we have everything figured out. But life is about knowing that there will be change, and faith is trusting that God is a part of those new beginnings. God is calling us into something new. So my question for you is, where is God calling you to begin again this season? Where is God calling you to take a step of faith, to trust, to let go of things, and to step into something new? And I'm wondering if we are faithful in that, if we are faithful in letting go of the old, of shedding those things that hold us back, of trusting in God's promise of that newness. If we step into something new, if we begin anew, what blessings will come out of it, not only for ourselves, but also for our communities. Let us be open to what the Spirit is doing in all of our lives, just like the Spirit has been working in the lives of people throughout the history of time, that we have seen in scriptures or that we know in our own personal lives. Let our story also be a part of that story of new beginnings as we are called to continue to follow Jesus.